Good morning, Giant Central School District. It's another edition of Stories with the Superintendent. And this week's edition is a book called Grace for President. And I chose this book because on Tuesday it is Election Day. And Election Day is an important day in our country when people go to vote for their congressmen, their senators, their president, and state representatives, local representatives, town representatives, and village representatives. And it's an important cornerstone of our democracy here in our country that everybody has the right to vote. And so when you turn 18, we hope that you register to vote so that you can participate in something that is one of the many things that makes our country so great. So we have this book for you today called Grace for President. And it goes something like this. One morning in September, Mrs. Barrington rolled out a big poster with all of the president's pictures on it. Grace Campbell could not believe her eyes. Where are the girls? That's a very good question, said Mrs. Barrington. The truth is, our country has never had a woman president. No girl president ever? Grace asked. Nope, I'm afraid not, said Mrs. Barrington. Grace sat at her desk and she stewed. No girls. Who'd ever heard of such a crazy thing? And finally, she raised her hand. Yes, Grace? I've been thinking it over, and I'd like to be president. Well, I think that's a star-spangled idea, Grace, said Mrs. Barrington. In fact, we have our own election right here at Woodrow Wilson Elementary School. The snickering in the room stopped. Grace smiled. Would anyone else like to be president? Mrs. Barrington asked the class. Nobody raised their hand. Becoming president was going to be easy, Grace thought. The next day, Mrs. Barrington made an announcement. In the name of democracy, I've invited Mr. Waller's class to join our election. Their class has nominated Thomas Cobb to be their presidential candidate. Grace's heart sank. Thomas was the school bee spelling champion. His experiments always took a blue ribbon at the science fair, and he was captain of the soccer team. Being president wasn't going to be so easy after all, Grace thought. The teachers put the names of all 50 states and the District of Columbia into a hat. Everyone except for Grace and Thomas got to choose a state. I'm Texas, said Anthony. I'm New Hampshire, said Rose. I'm Michigan, said Robbie. What does the number 17 mean? In each state is assigned a number of electoral votes. That number is determined by how many people live in that state, said Mrs. Barrington. Each of you will be a representative for your state. Altogether, our country has 538 electoral votes, Mr. Waller explained. On election day, the candidate who receives 270 electoral votes or more wins the election. Why 270, said Rose. That's more than half of all the electoral votes, Mr. Waller said. Becoming president really wasn't going to be easy, Grace thought. Grace came up with a campaign slogan. Thomas came up with his own campaign slogan. So Grace's is Make History, Vote Grace Campbell for President. And Thomas wrote, Vote for Thomas Cobb, the best man for the job. Grace listened to what issues were important to the students, and she made a list of campaign promises. A peaceful school, no bullies, a cleaner school, no littering, and better hot lunches, no more fish stick tacos. Thomas made up his own list of promises. Free tutoring, free soccer lessons, fish stick tacos every week. Grace made campaign posters and buttons. Thomas made buttons and campaign posters too. Each week, the teacher set aside time for the candidates to meet with their constituents. Polls were taken. Voters were making their choices. So constituents are the people that are voting. Polls are what people do to find out who might be winning right now. If the election were to take place right now, who would win? Who would you vote for? Grace continued to campaign. At recess, she gave speeches, and during lunch, she handed out free cupcakes. After school, she held rallies. Meanwhile, Thomas wasn't worried. He had cleverly calculated that the boys held slightly more electoral votes than the girls. And at recess, Thomas studied his spelling words. During lunch, he worked on his latest science experiment. And after school, he played soccer. Even before the election, Grace made good on her promises. She joined the safety squad. She organized a school beautification committee, and she volunteered her time in the school cafeteria. Grace looks worn out. She's working hard. That's what we call hustle. In early November, Woodrow Wilson Elementary hosted a special election day assembly, and Grace and Thomas took their places on stage as the school band began to play. Henry was the first representative to approach the microphone. The Yellowhammer state of Alabama cast its 9 electoral votes for Thomas Cobb. The last frontier state of Alaska cast its 3 electoral votes for the best man for the job, Thomas Cobb. The Grand Canyon state of Arizona cast its 10 electoral votes for Grace Campbell. And so it went. State after state cast their electoral votes. The scoreboard in the gymnasium kept track of the totals. The voting demonstration was quickly coming to an end, and Clara approached the podium. The Badger state of Wisconsin cast its 10 votes for my best friend, Grace Campbell. Grace looked at the scoreboard. Thomas had 268 electoral votes, and she had 267. There was only one state still unaccounted for. So they're going in alphabetical order. So the last state that's not accounted for is Wyoming. Thomas grinned. Grace felt sick. Sam walked up to the microphone. He looked at Thomas. He looked at Grace. He looked down at Grace's handmade flag. Sam didn't say a word. "What are you waiting for?" Thomas whispered. The band stopped playing, and all eyes were on Wyoming. Finally, Sam cleared his throat. The equality state of Wyoming cast its 3 electoral votes for Grace Campbell. The gymnasium erupted in loud cheers and a few boos, and Mrs. Barrington approached the podium. With 270 electoral votes, the winner is Grace Campbell. Thomas looked stunned. Grace hugged Sam. "Why did you do it?" she asked. Sam handed Grace his flag. "Because," he said, "I thought you were the best person for the job." The following week, the students in Mrs. Barrington's class were preparing for their career day demonstrations. Grace volunteered to go first. She stood at the front of the room and glanced at the poster still hanging on the wall. "My name is Grace Campbell, and when I grow up, I'm going to be President of the United States." And this time, everyone believed that she would. And look at, here she is as an adult being sworn in as the President of the United States right in front of the U.S. Capitol. So there you have it. This is a special book for election time next Tuesday. The election day is always the first Tuesday in November. So hopefully you'll be seeing mom and dads. And folks at home, go to the polls or vote by mail. We'll see you real soon. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and always remember your line pride.